This is happening right now, guys. Pam Bondi has been fired as Attorney General, not for defying Trump, but for failing to cover for him effectively enough. Her replacement, Todd Blanche, shows the same pattern of corruption, and Congressman Raskin warns that serving this administration is a career killer, not a career opportunity.
Congressman, thanks so much for sharing your afternoon with us. First, just what's your reaction to the news that Trump ousted as Attorney General?
Well, I'm afraid that the administration or the president may take the wrong message from this. I mean, her tenure was plainly a disaster, but she did everything that Donald Trump asked her to do. They sacked dozens and dozens of career attorneys just for having worked on the January 6th case. They did everything they could to obstruct the release of the Epstein files. Millions of pages of the Epstein files were withheld by Pam Bondi. They did nothing to try to crack down on the outrageous ICE tactics that were trampling people's civil rights and constitutional liberties in Minneapolis. And so she basically did everything that he asked her to do, and she shouldn't be just the fall person for a series of policies that I think are profoundly infected with unconstitutionality and illegality. So, people have been calling me saying, you must feel great because she called you a washed up loser lawyer during the hearing. And, I have no personal animus towards Pam Bondi, and I understand she was a pretty good prosecutor in Florida, and I hope she can restore her reputation. But going all the way down the road with the corruption in the administration, I think a career killer for a lot of people.
I wonder, Congressman, what you make of the timing, in part because it was only yesterday that Bondi had summoned the head prosecutor overseeing an investigation into whether former CIA Director John Brennan made false statements to Congress about a years-old intel assessment of Russian meddling in the 2016 election. Our reporting indicates that Bondi was trying to communicate to that prosecutor that she believed that he was slow-walking that investigation and that she wanted to see some development in the case. Do you think that the fact that she's been fired makes it more likely that we'll see similar prosecutions in the near future?
Well, that's what I'm afraid of. She turned the Department of Justice into Donald Trump's vendetta factory. And, whether we're talking about, the FBI director, Comey, or we're talking about the New York prosecutor, Letitia James, or we're talking about members of Congress like Maggie Goodlander. They thought that their job was basically to go out and investigate and prosecute Donald Trump's chosen foes, regardless of whether or not they've done anything. And that's why there's a record number of judges just castigating and excoriating the Department of Justice, Pam Bondi, and these lawyers for their absolute improper behavior in court and outside of court. And I hope that Donald Trump doesn't continue down this road. It'll just ruin some other lawyers' careers. And it doesn't give me a lot of comfort that it's Todd Blanche, who's now the acting Attorney General of the United States. This is the guy who transferred Ghislaine Maxwell from the higher security prison to the low security prison camp in Texas, and has arranged for a very sweet landing for her there.
I do want to ask you about Blanche and potential replacements for Bondi, but one more question on her, because she was supposed to appear on April 14th for a deposition before the House Oversight Committee. Ranking Member Garcia says that she still has to appear. James Comer, the chairman of that committee, has said that he's going to counsel with other Republicans on the panel to determine next steps. Nancy Mace, who initiated the call for Bondi to testify before them, says she still believes that it's on. But we are hearing indications from behind the scenes, including from CNN's Caitlin Collins, that part of the reason that Bondi is leaving the position is directly tied to the White House wanting to avoid her testifying before Congress. What do you make of that?
Well, a legal subpoena is a legal subpoena, and she has the responsibility and the duty to appear. It may be that Chairman Comer in his utterly invertebrate subservience to Donald Trump and the administration. We'll see if he can get enough Republicans to vote to withdraw the subpoena. But I believe that my colleague, ranking member Garcia, is absolutely right. That subpoena is still valid and she needs to appear.
What do you think the future is of the Epstein files investigation with Bondi now out of the picture?
Well, the president might be taking from all of this the idea that he needs a more skilled fighter on his behalf. But in fact, he should take it as a sign that the country has had enough of all of the obstructionism and all of the cover-up. We passed a law for a reason. We want every single one of those files released. We want only the names of victims redacted and not the names of the potential co-conspirators and enablers, which is what they've done. So we'll see whether they continue to dig even deeper in this betrayal of the federal law and justice. They've turned the Department of Justice into this the political law firm for Donald Trump, and they need to perform a 180-degree turnaround from that. And we'll see if there are enough cool heads in the White House to understand what's really gone wrong.
Before we go, Congressman, one final question quickly. Would you prefer Todd Blanche take on the role aside from an acting basis and be Bondi's official replacement, or perhaps your former House colleague Lee Zeldin or even Jeanine Pirro? Do any of those names resonate with you as potential replacements for Bondi?
No, they do not. All of them, again, are complete political sycophants and flunkies to Donald Trump. That was the problem in the first place. And so it's just asking another lawyer to walk the plank and sacrifice their professional reputation for Donald Trump. They should get in a real prosecutor, a real lawyer, and there are lots of good conservative ones, and a lot of them are the people who stood up to Pam Bondi in this process, including Eric Siebert, the U.S. attorney in the Eastern District of Virginia, who was replaced. He would make a good attorney general.
Congressman Jamie Raskin, I have some doubts that we'll see that nomination, but you never know. Thanks so much for joining us.
Pam Bondi is gone, but nothing has changed. That's the essence of what Congressman Jamie Raskin is saying in this interview. Bondi was fired, but not because she failed Donald Trump. She did everything he asked. She turned the Department of Justice into a vendetta factory. She sacked career attorneys for working on January 6th cases. She withheld millions of pages of Epstein files. She did nothing about ICE tactics that trampled civil rights. She investigated Trump's enemies, Comey, James, members of Congress, regardless of whether they'd done anything wrong. And now, she's the fall person, the scapegoat, the one who takes the blame so the administration can pretend it's cleaning house. But Raskin sees through it. He has no personal animus toward Bondi. He hopes she can restore her reputation. But he's clear, going all the way down the road with a corrupt administration is a career killer. And Bondi's replacement? Todd Blanche. The same Todd Blanche who transferred Ghislaine Maxwell from a high-security prison to a minimum-security camp in Texas. The same Todd Blanche who arranged a very sweet landing for a convicted sex trafficker. That's not a change. That's a continuation. Raskin is worried about the timing. Bondi was fired the day after she summoned the prosecutor investigating John Brennan. She wanted that prosecutor to speed up the case. She wanted results. And now, she's out. The message to the next Attorney General is clear. Go faster. Go harder. Don't slow walk anything. That's what Raskin is afraid of. Not that the investigations will stop, but that they will accelerate. That the vendetta factory will ramp up production. That more lawyers will walk the plank and sacrifice their professional reputations for a president who will discard them the moment they become inconvenient. The subpoena issue is telling. Bondi was supposed to testify before the House Oversight Committee on April 14th. Now she's been fired. And the reporting suggests that's not a coincidence. The White House wanted to avoid her testimony. They wanted to keep her from being deposed under oath. Raskin is blunt about Chairman Comer. He has an utterly invertebrate subservience to the Trump administration. He may try to withdraw the subpoena, but Raskin's colleague, Ranking Member Garcia is right. A legal subpoena is a legal subpoena. Bondi still has the duty to appear. The Epstein files are the heart of it. Congress passed a law for a reason. The American people want every single file released. They want victims' names redacted and co-conspirators' names exposed. Instead, Bondi did the opposite. She protected the powerful and covered up the truth. Raskin doesn't know if Blanche or Zeldin or Pirro would be any better. He calls them political sycophants and flunkies. He says the administration needs a real prosecutor, a real lawyer, someone like Eric Siebert, the U.S. attorney who stood up to Bondi and was replaced. But Raskin has doubts. He doubts the White House will nominate someone with integrity. He doubts the pattern will change. Because the problem isn't Bondi. The problem is the system. The problem is a president who sees the Department of Justice as his personal law firm, who expects loyalty above all else, who punishes anyone who dares to investigate him or his allies, and who will keep cycling through attorneys general until he finds one who is willing to do everything he asks without question, without hesitation, without the pesky interference of the Constitution. Raskin's message is clear. Bondi's firing is not a victory. It's a warning. The corruption continues. The cover-up continues. The vendetta continues. Only the names change. And until the American people demand accountability, until Congress enforces its subpoenas, until the courts hold this administration accountable, nothing will change. Pam Bondi is gone. But the Department of Justice is still Donald Trump's political law firm. And that is the disaster that Raskin has been warning about all along.